Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back. It is 20 after 9 o'clock, and we're now going to be talking with Dr. Faisal Suliman, the president of Islamic Medical Association of South Africa. And of course, they are saying no to genocide. And Faisal, welcome to the show. Whenever I talk to you, it's about lending the voice of the South African Medical Association to very serious matters within our community and beyond. And this time around, as you guys have been doing for a very long time, calling out once again to the medical fraternity regarding their presence making a difference with this case that is being heard at The Hague. Tell us more about it.
Yes, Julie, salam alaikum to you and the listeners, and thank you for the opportunity. So, as we know, this nightmare, I think people are running out of words to describe what is going on. In fact, getting worse in some instances of not just a mass genocide, but this continuing targeting of hospitals, abduction, killings of healthcare personnel. It's continuing unabated, and that doesn't appear that there's any pressure from the international world to put a stop to it. So the very least we can do, and today, of course, in Cape Town at the High Court, um, people are going to court regarding the ICJ, and at the very least, as South Africans, as human beings, of course, as Muslims and as healthcare professionals, the IMA was saying to healthcare professionals and others, let's make our presence felt for those in the Cape Town area at the court today. I think we mustn't forget the kind of pressure that our government is under. And perhaps I should now differentiate and say the ANC part of the government, because clearly the DA part of the government is quite happy with what Israel does, and is not only happy with it, but supportive of it, enabling it. Um, and they have very many of the same funders that fund the pro-Zionist lobby and fund the DA, donate to Patriotic Alliance Minister Gaten McKenzie, the IFP, Freedom Front Plus, and the spattering of all of the smaller ones, BUSA, even Action SA, etc. So the Zionist machinery is very strongly at work, working within the government of national unity and without pressure from businessmen. We see pressure. We see how even the coverage of this on our national broadcaster has diminished significantly. You can imagine the pressure that's coming from the United States, Canada, UK, France, etc., on South Africa to stop. Not that this court case at the ICJ has actually stopped the genocide from continuing, but it is the only legal framework that is happening in the world to have a semblance of bringing justice to the Palestinians. So I think marching, demonstrations, raising consciousness, um, uh, all of it is extremely necessary, because I think there's also almost fatigue. I mean, I hear people saying, and myself included, that you can't watch these videos anymore because partly it reminds us of how helpless we are. But
Absolutely.
can we picture the Palestinians who don't know if they're going to make tonight? Even taking refuge in a hospital isn't safe. If you can't feel safe in a hospital, that you're going to be burnt alive, living right next to or within the precincts of a hospital, what possible place can you hide when you're told to move south and then the south get bombs, move north and north get bombs, and now we see what's happening in southern Lebanon as well, Yemen, Syria. So this rogue state, this genocidal state, is not stopping. The world is, in fact, the opposite, supplying it with arms to continue this mass killing. So there's I think, an absolute feeling of happiness from Muslims, but we have faith. The Palestinians have shown us about faith, and all we need to do now is persevere in whatever ways we can. And I think what is important for people listening is to continuously be sending messages to the presidency, to the Minister of Justice, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, making sure that they see that the people of South Africa are behind them, because they are under barrage of pressure. It's not openly visible, but I mean, it's obvious the kind of pressure that must be being put on the government, on the ANC, on President Ramaphosa as the president of the country, but also as the president of the ANC. And within the ANC themselves, you make no mistake, the Zionist machinery is working to use the
Absolutely.
splits and the divisions and the factions um, to, make sure that South Africa tones down whatever it's doing, and that South Africa is being seen as one of the few countries that have, under Minister Naledi Pandor, who spoke out openly and vociferously against the genocide. So it's crucial that not just Muslims, but anybody who is interested in justice, anybody who is concerned about how we're going to answer to Almighty God, to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala one day, that you do whatever you can. And social media is one of the ways that's so simple, from from your home, from the phone, from work, where you can be posting messages, where you can giving support, raising consciousness, not within Muslim WhatsApp groups, Julie, not within Muslim circles, but outside of the Muslim community, outside of the pro-Palestinian community. I think there are many, many people who are being fed the Zionist rhetoric, the justification, all the nonsense. Hamas was hiding arms under the hospital. Hezbollah is hiding cash and gold and arms under the hospitals, and therefore they have to be bombed. Nonsense like this. And some people seem to believe it because they're not hearing an alternative narrative. So it's incumbent upon all of us, really compulsory. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly in the Quran, "Oh, you believe, stand up firmly for justice." Firmly is the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, not just, firmly. And we know this, if I paraphrase the hadith, Julie, that when you see something wrong, you have to do something with your hands and speak out against it. And if not, then just think it. And that's the weakest form of Iman. I don't think we want to be known to be for the weakest form of our Iman, but inshallah for the strongest form of it, which means doing something about this. So yes, demonstrate, march, put up murals. All of these things are also important for the Palestinians to be seen, those in South Africa and those outside, that there are people in the world prepared to stand up. In fact, if we're quite honest, people in other countries, in Western countries, have done much more than we have. They're out there in supermarkets removing Israeli goods, demonstrating outside. Even Jewish people in New York, shutting down the New York Stock Exchange, demonstrating in Congress, in the Senate, speaking out. So there's a lot more I think we should be doing and can be doing. And I think social media, our newspapers, our government, the SABC, is where we can be concentrating a lot of our efforts from the comfort of our homes.
Okay, I want to make 3 comments on 3 different matters. They may seem unrelated, but I think they're all tied into what we're talking about, and that is, let's not become exhausted and overwhelmed by everything that we see on TV. And yes, I have also, sad to say, reached that point where I can't watch the bombings and the killings of innocent people. If I'm feeling this way, I can't even begin to imagine what the people in the actual situation are feeling and the trauma that they are going through. Um, you talk about us as Muslims putting out the correct narrative to non-Muslims in our neighborhoods and in our country at large, because I guess we've reached a point where every one of us, each and every one of us, realize and know what the situation's like in Palestine, and the struggle must continue. And that's where your open mosque days come in. I mean, that was an idea that you guys started a very, very long time ago. And here's another opportunity with these amazing open mosque days. There were certain sections of the community that were not for open mosque days, whatever the reasons were, maybe suggesting that you can't allow non-Muslims into the mosque, and a whole host of issues. But here again, it is crucial that those type of mosque days and open days in our communities continue to happen. So really hats off to you guys. When we talked about exhaustion regarding the Palestinian situation, earlier on I spoke to a young African gentleman, a South African gentleman, Itani, and he's doing these walks from city to city. You must have heard about him, creating awareness for the Palestinian cause. And what was sad to hear was him suggesting that he doesn't have the funding to do it. And yes, he needs funding to walk from city to city. He has someone that photographs what happens, and he has a driver, come security person. And he is saying that if I don't get the funding, I'll have to let those two people go, but I will continue doing my activism for as long as I can. And I think we need to step in here to support this young man because he's putting out a very, very strong message. And last but not least, when we talk about being tired of all of what we see on radio and TV, I spoke to a journalist last week in Palestine and I used the wrong word. I was responding to him. I was going to ask him how he feels about the situation. I said, "You must feel so defeated." And he came down very hard on me. He says, "Don't ever say that West Palestinians are defeated. That's not in our vocabulary. We are not defeated. We will continue to fight to our last breath." So if you want to respond to that commentary of mine.
Yes, Julie. So you see, what you have to understand and realize, firstly, the easy one, if there is such a thing as an easy one, is that we have to prioritize paying people to do things. We keep saying it. Most of the people involved in the Palestinian struggle in South Africa have full-time jobs, academics, professionals, people working, people in business, etc., and do what they can or we can part-time. It's just not good enough. Honestly, it's just not good enough because it becomes, I'll do it when I can. And there's always things to do. There's always work to be done, your own work, people involved in the Palestinian struggle, etc., are also involved in other organizations, mosque committees, school governing bodies, or whatever. So time becomes a premium. And therefore, it's easy to put off or it gets put off. I think until we don't change our mindset, and we'll be talking about this for another 30 years, in that the community has to, stop giving or divert some of the funds. I won't say stop giving, but divert some of the funds that are going to humanitarian relief and going towards boreholes and feeding and all of these things, and set aside money so that people like us at SAMNet can pay people full time to do the kind of work that is necessary. The Zionists, there was something I read some time back, not so long ago. They have 600 senior attorneys fully employed all over the world, ready at any one moment to take on what they call lawfare, using the law to wage war, lawfare, etc. And in South Africa, we've seen how active they are, how unashamed they are. One would think, given the massacres that are going on, they at least be silent or do things quietly. They're out there in the open, demonstrating, attacking, the dean of health sciences at Wits, Professor Mahdi, for speaking out pro-Palestinian, going to court to challenge UCT's decision that led to the students from Gaza being able to go to the university. If they could stop the university, the Gaza students who are at Wits now, they would. So unashamed and still rabidly anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, clearly anti-Palestinian. So that is the first part to understand. That goes to the funding for this young man doing this walking. Money has to be put in. Really, we need to cut 10-15% of what we're saying. Let's put money in boreholes and feeding people, etc., towards this. Secondly, the narrative that has been created over decades. In fact, one could say it already started when the first Oriental books and the first Crusade started, was framing the Muslim in a certain mindset. And of course, with the advent of novels and movies and TV series, this has been enhanced, and it took on a global proportions after 9/11. And that is painting Muslims, Arabs in a certain narrative in your movies and novels and TV series and all your Netflix things, etc. And then that mindset that these are evil people, they anti the world, they anti-Western values, they are not like us, etc., etc. Then extends to the Palestinians, but by default, the Palestinians, it's framed as a Muslim. They're not. They move away. They underplay the fact that Christian Palestinians have also been oppressed and their churches bombed, etc. So the combined narrative it links one to the other. Islamophobia, and the Palestinians are Arabs and they're Muslims. So by extension, They are the same. They are not like us. They're against our values. They were all involved in 9/11, and link one to the other, and therefore they almost deserve what they're getting because they're not human. They're subhuman. And the mosque
Mm-hmm.
open days were partly intended to address that as well, to make them come to the mosque. And by the way, those ulama groupings that are against it, because one, a woman should be in a mosque and non-Muslims shouldn't be in a mosque, it's just a load of nonsense. And they haven't bothered us, they haven't stopped us, and really not worth our time and energy discussing them. They're not going to change. So we just carry on despite them. Um, so it's all linked in some sense, and therefore the mosque openness, as you alluded to, we started it so that people would come to the mosque, see a different narrative, see Muslims as human beings with the same concerns. I mean, around the mosque, in our experience, people who live around the mosque who've attended have come there and seen, okay, these are Muslims, this is what they believe in. There's no some secret block or square in the mosque that they're worshipping, etc. So one is the religious education, but the second one was also to see the Muslims as human beings like they do, with the same concerns about crime and school fees and the children's academic performance and everything else, not as the other, as similar to us but of a different faith.
Absolutely.
So
Mm-hmm.
so to break down that mindset and narrative that they're being fed, and I mean, even it's down to your video games, your PlayStation games, to cartoons, etc. Those video games and what are PlayStation games entrench this, because whenever there's these killing games, invariably the terrorist that to being killed is dressed in a kifaya, presented as an Arab name,
Yeah,
the bomb, all of these stereotypes we are accustomed to. So it's a combination of all of these. But to reiterate to people who are listening, it doesn't matter how much. You have to diversify. I mean, I would like to employ 2 and 3 lawyers full time, or even one for that matter. Like to employ 2 or 3 journalists full time to sit and do nothing but challenge these narratives, whether it's about Palestine, about Kashmir, or even just about South African Muslims. And now with the DA entrenched in government, it's only going to get worse. People
absolutely.
may not know that the Israelis are pouring into the Western Cape. And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see greater
Yes.
movement, greater impetus for this One Cape movement. You're going to see greater
Mm-hmm.
impetus for the DA to create these enclaves. And these are the people who are going to be voting for white supremacy and everything else. So we can't be, so blasé about this. So, it's just carrying on. Our lives are carrying on, and that's
Yep.
the sad reality. Our lives are
I agree
continuing
with
as
you.
normal.
I agree with you. We dig deep into our pockets and we do support causes very generously. But you're right, we need to now start thinking differently. We do need to diversify. We need to be smart. We need to be as smart as the opposition. Um, to start, beating them at their own game. Let's put it that way. So, yes, I think we as South Africans need to wake up. We are doing a lot, but much more needs to be done. Your closing remarks on the show this morning, Faisal, and once again, to you and IMASA, keep on the amazing work. But any closing thoughts before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
I think perhaps Salam Media should look at a fundraising campaign for this young man so that he can continue his walks. Maybe give it clearly more airtime. Perhaps as SAMNet, as the IMA, we can try and assist in some way to raise awareness as well, clearly from the SAMNet perspective. And importantly, you mentioned it, the Palestinians have shown us what it is like to resist. They are the true heroes, the true, superheroes of our day. And it comes from faith. And we need to have the faith, but with faith must come action. So encourage your imam. Why aren't the masjid the centers of activism? The local trustees of your masjid, your imams. When are we going to teach the Palestinian history within our madrasas? We need to be putting pressure on all of this to say, why aren't we talking about this in our madrasas and more in our mosques? These need to become centers of activism. Instead, we are honestly regressing in terms of what we're doing for the Palestinian struggle. There's so much more we have to be doing. Not can, not must. It's incumbent on us to be doing it.
Dr. Faisal Suliman, President of the Islamic Medical Association of South Africa, you and IMASA, and I guess other like-minded Muslims in South Africa. Shukran very much for all of your efforts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everything you aspire to do to help this, the end to this crazy genocide, inshallah. Shukran for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It is exactly news and views moving along, and of course it's that time on a Monday morning that we all look forward to. It's time when we take a listen to the Fired Up series with Hafiz Imran Chunara. He's a personal excellence mentor and CEO of Africa Muslims Agency. And I think before we take a listen to that, are we taking ads first? We're taking ads. I'm checking with my controller. I don't want to get into trouble here. Ads first, and then we're going to listen to the Fired Up series with Imran Chunara. Please stay with us.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.